What does the story of SS and LL tell us? It tells us in simplicity that when we make choices that are in the future, we make wise choices. When we make those same choices today, we tend to make impulsive ones. They think about it as having two entities within us, a planner and a doer. The planner looks forward, he sees the LL being bigger than SS. The impulsive guy, the doer, actually falls in the lapse zone. And so the idea behind self-control devices is, can we think about ways in which the planner can trick the doer and make sure that they don't fall prey into a lapse zone? And that's essentially the heart of self-control devices. So when we ask people about whether they want to work hard or not, when they look into the future, the answer is yes. Do you want to save more? Yes, but not today. I'll save more tomorrow. Okay? So a simple strategy for getting people to do what is good for them is to get them to pre-commit to doing something for the future and then figuring out a locking mechanism to make sure that they follow through on that. There could be a number of different kinds of locking mechanisms. The first one could be a contract. You commit to saving more tomorrow, and if you do not meet those savings targets, you pay an economic penalty. Or it could be a social contract. Here's an example of a company that uses social contracts in a very interesting way. It's called Stick.com, and it was invented by, among others, a professor of economics at Yale, Dean Carlin. Here's how it works. Let's say there is a behavior that you want to engage in that you've been struggling with. You've been meaning to learn the piano, or you've been meaning to lose weight, you've been meaning to read Odysseus, and you've struggled to do it. You can go up there and actually make a public proclamation of what it is that you want to do. The site is going to help you find a judge. This is somebody who's going to monitor your progress. And you can also set up your own cheering groups. But here's the interesting part. It asks you to wager an amount of money that you believe that that thing is important to you. So you're going to say to yourself, I want to lose 5 pounds, and if I don't lose 5 pounds, I'm willing to give up $400. You commit, you send them a check, and what happens if you do not meet your target group? It's two things. One, Stick.com could donate the money that you just gave them to a charity not of your choice, but a charity that they believe is going to be something that you hate. And so people are motivated to actually not lose that money to a cause that they don't trust. The other thing that happens is if you fail to meet your goal, Stick.com or other devices like that can actually post to your Facebook or Twitter timelines so that all of your friends know that you set off trying to lose weight and you failed. And that can be a very powerful social motivator. So it's an interesting example of a contract that has both economic consequences as well as social consequences. The other locking mechanism that can be used is designing a product or designing a service where people, in fact, almost forget that they're in a contract. Dick Taylor and Shlomo Bonazzi came up with an interesting program called Save More Tomorrow. The idea was simple. Today, you committed to setting aside some % of future salary increases into a separate mental account. And by the virtue of the fact that it was a separate mental account, people never saw that extra money being set aside. But here's the interesting part, is a lot of people actually forgot that they were in the program. And when their salaries went up, what they noticed was that the separate account where the savings kept going up, but they just did not keep track of the fact that they were in the program. They never saw the cash, and as a result, they couldn't do much about it. The third way in which you can exert a locking mechanism is by peer pressure. Number of interesting examples of product categories that could involve in the savings domain, for example, piggy banks or savings boxes that can only be opened by 2 keys. Let's say you keep 1 key and I keep 1. And if I have to dip into my savings, the only way I can get to that savings is to ask you to provide your key. And the fact that I'm going to actually expose my lack of self-control to you can be a powerful motivator in encouraging people to save more. So these are just some examples of how you can lock people into a behavior that they have committed to doing in the future. Here's another interesting example of an invention, of an intervention that is designed to exert self-control. This one comes from Gmail, and the product is called Google Goggles by Gmail. Simple idea. If you're an undergraduate student or you're someone who loves drinking on a Friday night, chances are good that you will send an email that you wish you hadn't sent at that point in time. And so what you can do is you can impose a lock on yourself. And here's the way the lock works. You can tell Google when you plan to be drunk, or you can tell Google when you plan to be stressed. And what Google will then do is, if you try and send an email in that window, it's going to make you solve a bunch of math problems, like this one here. And unless you get all math problems correct, it will not send your email. So again, what's happening here is you've got a planner who knows that you might end up sending risky emails at a given point in time, and the planner imposes a cost, a lock on the doer, a classic example of self-control. So when we think about the notion of self-control, you can think about it as a conflict between willpower and desire. Think of these as two entities fighting each other. Got a bunch of strategies that you can use to reduce the desire or to increase the willpower. How do I reduce desire? Avoidance. People take long walks just to avoid the cake shop on their way to work. If you don't see it, you're not going to fall in the lapse zone. You could distract yourself. Or you could substitute that substance that you are addicted to, that you fall prey to, with some other activity. A lot of people will chew gum every time they feel like smoking a cigarette. And that's a simple act of substitution. How do I increase willpower? And we've already looked at a number of these strategies. Pre-commit. If you can pre-commit and design a locking mechanism, that's a great way of increasing willpower. Or every time you fall prey into a particular situation where you're tempted to buy a product, you can impose a decision point kind of an intervention. We saw last week a hypothetical example of someone swiping a card and then being prompted, do you really want to buy this product? Finally, you could use budgets. You could use jars. You could tell yourself, I'm only going to spend $200 on a given product in a given month. You open the jar, if there's no money in there, then you've blown your budget, and that acts as a wonderful self-control device.